Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video. Today we are using the Spellbinders clear stamp and die kit for July. It's got some cute little popsicles in it, lots of fun little sayings for summer, some fruit. So I just want to mention that there's a ton of 4th of July sales going on right now. Spellbinders is one of the people who's having a really great sale. They have a 40% off sale. Their Star Spangled event, and then there's another, their clearance section, which is always amazing, has like up to 70% off. There's a ton more people having sales. I will link that below in the YouTube description if you would like to go check those out. And then, okay, let's get back into this card that we're making. So I'm a colorist. You guys know that. So sometimes it's a little bit of a struggle for me to use solid images. And I'm going to show you 2 different ways that I get a little bit more depth and dimension out of my stamps that makes me happier with the way that they look. And one of those ways is by getting a gradient or a color blend. Now I chose to do mine more of an ombre where they all match the same, but you could totally mix this up. So the first way we're going to do it is with the stamp. And so I chose Distress Oxides because they are more opaque and they will blend really well together. So I stamped the whole thing in my lightest color. And then here's where the trick comes in. You guys have probably seen me do this before or seen it on other videos. It's not anything new, but if you're new to card making, maybe you haven't seen it. So I'm going to ink up with my medium color, only about halfway. I'm going to use a damp baby wipe to blot my color off at the top so that it has a nice natural blend. And then I'm going to stamp it down. And I did this 2 times just because I wanted to make sure there was definitely a difference of color between them. And so here you could just do 2 colors. You'll see when I lift it up that there is a distinct difference between the 2. But I am going to do 3. I'm going to do just a little bit darker on the bottom. Now, my lightest color was that saltwater taffy, which honestly I have owned for like a couple of months now and I have not used. So I'm glad I got an opportunity to use it. So here is the color gradient using the Distress Oxides. You can use any inks that you have. I would not recommend doing this particular technique with Distress inks. We're going to use those later, just because they're not as solid and you're not going to get as solid of an image, which can just be really frustrating. But if you have like a go-to ink that you're happy with, you don't have to use one that's reactive with water. We're not using that with this technique, though you could if you were interested in it. Don't be afraid to kind of play around and try something different and see if it worked. If it doesn't, it's just paper, y'all. So now I moved on to stamping my fruit. This particular one, I'm doing the strawberries. And so at the bottom, I'm stamping with my darkest color with that candied apple. And then I'm going to get lighter as I move up. I did not stamp any of them with my lightest color, just because I wanted to make sure that it would show up. But I did double stamp most of these. That's the joy of the Misty. The Misty makes this so easy instead of trying to continually line them up. You know, they're just where you put them and they stay there until you move them. So that part's great. It was a little weird, I'm not going to lie, because most of the time when you see strawberry stamps, they have the top to them. This one does have the top to them, but it didn't make any sense to put it in the popsicle because you wouldn't eat that part, but they did just look a little bit off to me because they didn't have a top. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that makes any sense. Like, you wouldn't eat the top, but they look weird without the top. Maybe just me. So in this one, I didn't do any stamping that was generational stamping, but I did do a little bit of masking. Here I just have a piece of Post-it note tape because I wanted to put one more strawberry down at the bottom. With this technique, with using the stamp, you would have to do some masking in order to make sure that you don't stamp off, because the die does leave the border around, so you would be able to see that you stamped off of the image. I'm going to go back in now and do the seed portion of the strawberries. And for this, I just chose a darker red. I didn't want it to be like black in your face. So I just went with an aged mahogany and it did blend in pretty well while still giving that detail. So in the last video, we left a little bit of a cliffhanger. I'm sorry. I just ran out of time. Y'all. And some of you did make mention in the comments that like I already sounded like I couldn't breathe. And you are correct. I am over 2 weeks? No, I'm coming up on 2 weeks since I got sick, and I am still, super congested every morning. I still have a cough. It's just whatever this is just brutal. It's awful. We had COVID and I was not this sick. And several of you also made comments about how like we've been sick for forever, for 5 ever. That's how long we've been sick. I am so sick of being sick, or my kids being sick. Oh my gosh, y'all. So we last left off at Caitlin being rushed to the emergency room for low oxygen. They transported her by ambulance, and then I could not go. So once Erica got there, got situated, he said the guys on the ambulance were really great. One of them actually recognized them, which is weird because it's not even like the same city that we work in. Back to this. So here's technique number 2. And for this technique, you do need the dye. I have a spare piece of acetate that I had left over from a shaker card, and I'm going to die cut my popsicle out of this piece of acetate. In essence, I'm creating my own stencil. And I'm going to put my Tombow Mono multi-glue on the back. You guys know that I'm a fan of this when it comes to my regular stencils that I purchase from the store. And this, when it dries repositionable. You can't put it down wet. Wet will just glue the piece of acetate to our card. But dry, and I am going to smear it around to make sure that I have a good seal around the edges. But once it is dry, it's repositionable, and I don't know that I've ever had to like reapply the glue to any of my stencils. But so I'm just going to tap it on my hands to make sure that it is dry and it's just sticky. And then I'm going to stick it down to my cardstock. I am also going to use some Post-it note tape to mask off the edges so that I don't get ink where I don't want it. But this is the way that you can use any ink that you want. You can use any ink that you want, even one that doesn't stamp well. We're going to do this one with Distress Oxides, but we're going to do the next one with Distress Inks. Both of them came out beautiful. You could use this for anything that you would use ink blending with. And it's going to give you that really nice blended look for your colors, because essentially you are just ink blending. We've just masked off an area that's going to match our dye to cut out later, but it doesn't require, any other extra tools. Like I said, I had this leftover acetate from one of my shaker cards. So once I got the ink blending where I wanted it, I am going to stamp in the little lemon or orange slices, and I'm going to use 2nd generation stamping. If you're not familiar with what that is, it just means that you stamp once after inking up, and then you do not ink up again and stamp down a second time. This is going to give the illusion that there's different levels of the orange slices or lemon slices in the popsicle, and I was really happy with the way this came out. I'm going to do the same thing with the blueberries and the Distress Inks for the next one. This stenciled, cleaned up just like anything else. So once I was done with it, I went ahead and removed the masking tape. I removed the mask, and then I just wiped it off with a baby wipe. Or you could use your chamois or wash it in the sink, or, whatever you do with your normal stencils. And then I can just keep this stencil with this set so that the next time I want to use it, I have it and it's available. Okay, back to story time. So Eric got to the hospital. They got her in there. They did give her a breathing treatment. And her oxygen was into the 90s. So like everything was good. He called me to give me an update, and he was like, hey, I didn't, and it's not his fault. I mean, you're going to the doctor's office. You're not thinking you're going to the hospital, especially since she didn't look like she was in any distress. So he didn't have like her blanket, any toys for her, like nothing. And now he's in this emergency room where you can't even set her down. There's not like a safe place to set down a baby. unless you're like standing right on top of her. So either he's got to hold her or he's got to sit next to her on the bed. She's real wiggly right now because she's almost crawling. So she's real interested in moving. And he was like, can you either drop these things off to me or do you want to see if they'll let you in? So, my mom stays with Nathan. My dad drives me to the hospital. And I told him, I was like, I'll let you know whether or not they'll let me in. So I just, you have to still be masked in the hospitals and everything else. So I just went up there. I said, my daughter's here, in intake 2. And they didn't ask me any questions, nothing at all. They let me right in. So I was here for that. So I went in. Here, one thing of note, I am stamping my blueberries with Distress Oxide just because they do leave a better impression than Distress inks. So I went in, got to see her. She really did look fine. I mean, she was clearly sick. She was clearly congested, but she didn't look like she was in any sort of distress. They didn't have her hooked up to anything, nothing. So I was like, when was the last time they, did anything with her? And he was like, they gave her a breathing treatment when we first got here, but that's it. That's all they've done. And so, I just held her and, let her sleep. I put the Disney Channel up on my phone and we watched Encanto and Frozen. But eventually the emergency room doctor came in and they did tell us that she was going to talk to the pediatrician, and then our choices were either we could take her home with a nebulizer and breathing treatment, or we would have to go just for observation to one of the pediatric units. There was 2 different hospitals that were a choice. And so we were like, okay, let us know when you talk to the pediatrician. Back to the card. So here on popsicles, you usually see like those 2 little divot lines. And so to give them even more dimension, I wanted to put those back in. These do not have to be precise. Mine aren't even. You can see them. You can see that they're not even. But this just gives it a little bit more dimension and that look that you would expect from seeing a popsicle. And so, while it is an extra step, it did not take me very long, and I'm really happy that I did it. I liked the way they looked with this extra little bit of dimension. So the ER comes back in and says, I talked to the pediatrician, and they think that her low oxygen reading was legitimate, and so I would recommend that you go for observation. Okay, that's fine. That's what we'll do. And then she says that she has to be transported again by ambulance because we can't just drive her. If we want to just drive her, we'd have to sign her out AMA. So we're like, okay, we'll wait for the ambulance. Now, if you follow my channel, you know that my husband and I are both in the first responder category, and we know that this is this big, gigantic game. So we wait. We made the decision to go for observation at 4 o'clock. They then told us that the transportation would not be there until 7:30. So we watch our Disney movies, we take naps, not me or Eric, Caitlin takes naps, and then we hang out. At 7:45, nobody else has arrived, and so we asked them to call about the transport again, and now they've pushed it back until 9:30. So we said to them, is it an option for us to just take her home with a nebulizer? Because at this point, it's really going to go, we're going to go there. She's going to sleep for whatever, like sleep terribly for, 5 or 6 hours. And then we're probably going to be able to go home. So, because again, she's not hooked up to anything. Nobody's even monitoring it. So something of note, you saw me do those little dots on the blueberries. That was just to make them look a little bit more realistic. So they weren't just like polka dots. And then I set up my dies to cut these out. I am now going to stamp the sticks for these. The ground espresso, which is what I stamped the detail layer with, is a little bit dark. But that's okay. It got the job done. If I had to do it over again, I'd probably do a brushed corduroy, but you do whatever color combination works for you. So we're like, is that an option for us? Well, the ER doctor that gave the recommendation that we go for observation is no longer on duty. So the other ER doctor said, I'm comfortable giving you the prescription for the nebulizer and the albuterol, but you will have to sign her out AMA because I didn't see her. I couldn't, that was the other doctor's assessment, and we kind of have to go with what she said. So we make the decision that we're going to sign her out AMA, which I have never done in my life. Not for me, not for one of my kids, not for, I haven't entertained it for one of my parents or my siblings. Like, I have never done that. But it just did not seem like anybody was doing anything for her, and she wasn't in any sort of distress. So we take her home. I stay up until 4 o'clock in the morning watching her. Because I'm terrified that she's going to have trouble breathing or there's going to be something wrong and I'm going to miss it. So I stay up until 4 o'clock in the morning watching her. At 4 o'clock in the morning, I cannot stay up any longer. I wake up Eric, and then he gets up and watches her while I got some sleep. The next morning, we took her back to her pediatrician, and he was like, I don't know if the low oxygen reading was good or not. And Eric even said, that there was a nurse that came in like, hey, this isn't, I don't think this is right. She doesn't look like she's in any distress. So our pediatrician sends us home with, to get an over-the-counter decongestant, which he gave us I think it was like a fourth of a teaspoon, doing the breathing treatments. And then obviously, Tylenol or Motrin for if she has a fever. That's on Friday. So we come home, we do, we're doing those things. She's not getting any worse, but she doesn't seem to be getting any better. In the ER, I should tell you, they tested her for COVID, they tested her for RSV, and they tested her for flu A and B. All of them came back negative on Thursday. So she's not getting any worse, but she's not getting any better. Back to the card. So here, I started to put the popsicle down, and my glue is on the card because I had to scoot it over because it wasn't enough room. And I just wanted to show you. So if you try to go in with a regular eraser, that's what this is. It's just an eraser on a mechanical pencil. All it does is move the glue around. It doesn't typically get rid of it. It just kind of smushes it all over. There's a reason why adhesive erasers exist, and that's what I'm using here. And I know it seems like just a little thing, and I think they're like $2 to buy, but it can really save your card. If I had not had an adhesive eraser here, I would have had to either remake this popsicle, or I would have had to cut it off of the background to reglue it to a new card base because that glue was so prominent. There was no other way. Like, I would have had no other way to get rid of it, and it wouldn't have been salvageable. So the blue one is popped up on foam, and I'm gluing the other two down flat. The sentiment says, happiness is ice cream on a summer day. It's a good day to be happy. I thought that was cute. It's a combination of two different sentiments, but I feel like, hey, look this is happiness, and today's a good day to be happy. And I feel the same way. Also, my husband does because he loves ice cream. So we decide we're going to bring her home. We do all that. And then she's not really getting any better, but not getting any worse. It's not great. She's still very congested. On Sunday, things change. On Sunday, she starts... she's not eating. That's the other thing I forgot to tell you. She was not eating. We did bring that up to the pediatrician. He told us to try Pedialyte. He told us to try thinning her formula with the Pedialyte. And so we did all of that, but girlfriend's not interested. So we are basically having to force feed our child with a syringe to keep her hydrated. That's what's going on Saturday because she just won't drink. Now, I think she won't drink because, babies can't breathe out of their mouths. They can only breathe out of their nose. So if she can't breathe out of her nose because she is so congested, when you put the bottle in her mouth, it literally seals everything off. Like, she can't get any air. And so I think that was a big part of the problem. Plus, when you don't feel good, you don't want to eat. But in babies' cases, their eating is their drinking. Like, there isn't something else that's an option. She was not a fan of the Pedialyte. she just wasn't. She wasn't a fan of anything that we were doing, quite honestly, but we were trying. Here I'm adding some white highlights with my white gel pen, and then I'm actually going to take this highlight up a step further by using glossy accents. And I'm sure you saw me coat the entire thing with shimmers because popsicles should have glitter in them. Edible glitter. That should be a thing. Let's make a product. So yeah, so that's where we are. On Sunday, things took a turn, and then it started changing. So we're probably going to have to do Hospital Stay Part 3, but I mean, you have to understand, for us, this is stretching across almost like a week. Well, eventually it does. It is well over a week. But for story time, it's hard to fit it all in there and give you all kind of the play-by-play. So this is the card. I hope that you learned a little bit of something and were inspired to try it. I appreciate you spending your time with me. I will link those sales below if you would like to check them out. And I hope that you guys have a wonderful day. I'll catch you on the next video.